Welcome back to Plain English Big Ideas, the podcast where we take complex legal and technology topics and make them understandable. Today, we are talking about something that almost everyone has seen, but not everyone truly understands: GDPR. You know, those cookie banners, privacy policies, emails saying, "We have updated our privacy notice." They're everywhere. But what is GDPR actually about? Is it just about annoying pop-ups?
That is a great place to start because GDPR is definitely much bigger than cookie banners. GDPR stands for the General Data Protection Regulation. It is an EU data protection law that sets rules for how organizations collect, use, store, share, and protect personal data. At its heart, GDPR asks one simple question. When an organization has information about you, is it treating that information responsibly?
So it's not only about whether a company has my name and email address.
Exactly. It's about the whole life cycle of personal data. For example, how did the company get your data? Why does it need the data? Is it collecting more data than necessary? Is it keeping the data for too long? Is it sharing the data with other companies? Is it protecting the data from hackers, leaks, or misuse? Can you ask to see, correct, or delete your data? GDPR gives individuals more control and requires organizations to be more transparent and accountable.
So GDPR is really about power.
Yes, that is a very good way to put it. In the digital world, companies often have much more information and power than individuals. GDPR tries to rebalance that relationship. It says, your personal data is not just a business asset, it's connected to your identity, your choices, your privacy, and sometimes even your safety.
Part 1. What is the purpose of GDPR? Why did the European Union create GDPR in the first place?
Because the old privacy rules were created before smartphones, social media, cloud computing, targeted advertising, AI recommendation systems, smartwatches, and large-scale data analytics became part of everyday life. Think about how much personal information people now share online. Their location, their shopping habits, their health data, their search history, their messages, their travel patterns, their work information, their relationship status, and sometimes even their biometric data, such as facial recognition information.
The EU wanted a stronger and more modern legal framework. So GDPR has several goals.
Yes. Its main goals include protecting people's personal data from misuse or unauthorized access, giving individuals more control over how their data is used, making organizations transparent about their data practices, creating more consistent data protection rules across EU and EEA countries, building trust between people and organizations.
That last point is interesting. People often think privacy law is only about restriction.
But good privacy practice can actually support innovation. Imagine two fitness apps. The first app says, we collect everything you do, share it with partners, and may use it for future purposes. The second app says, we collect only the information needed to provide your workout plan. We explain why we use each type of data. You can delete your account easily, and we protect your information. Which app would you trust more?
Definitely the second one.
Exactly. GDPR is not supposed to stop every form of data use. It's supposed to make data use more responsible, fair, and trustworthy.
Part 2. Who does GDPR apply to? A lot of people think GDPR only applies to companies located in Europe. Is that true?
No. That is one of the most common misunderstandings. GDPR can apply to organizations inside and outside the EU. It generally applies in three major situations. First, it applies to organizations established in the EU or EEA when they process personal data. Second, it can apply to organizations outside the EU if they offer goods or services to people who are in the EU. Third, it can apply to organizations outside the EU if they monitor the behavior of people in the EU.
Can you give us a practical example?
Of course. Imagine a small online clothing company based in Canada. It has a website in English, accepts payments in euros, ships to Germany and France, and runs advertising campaigns targeted at people in the EU. Even though the company is located in Canada, GDPR may apply because it's offering goods or services to people in the EU.
What about a company that simply has a website that people in Europe can access?
That alone doesn't automatically mean GDPR applies. A website being visible from Europe is not necessarily enough. The question is whether the organization is actively targeting people in the EU or monitoring their behavior there. For example, a company may be targeting EU users if it offers prices in euros, offers delivery to EU countries, uses EU languages, runs marketing campaigns aimed at EU residents, or tracks EU users for behavioral advertising.
What does monitoring behavior mean?
It can include tracking people online, analyzing their browsing habits, building advertising profiles, or predicting their interests. For example, imagine a mobile app tracks a user's location every day, records which shops they visit, and uses that information to show personalized ads. That may count as behavioral monitoring.
So a company can't avoid GDPR just by putting its office outside Europe.
Exactly. GDPR looks at the activity, not only the company address.
Part 3. What counts as personal data? Let's talk about personal data. Is it only obvious information, such as a person's name?
No. Personal data is much broader than that. Personal data is information that can identify a person directly or indirectly. Direct identifiers include full name, phone number, email address, home address, passport number, bank account number, national identification number. But indirect identifiers can also be personal data. These may include IP addresses, device identifiers, cookie identifiers, location data, online usernames, advertising IDs, browsing history, photos, voice recordings, and combinations of data that make someone identifiable.
So even an IP address can be personal data.
Yes, a single piece of information may not always reveal someone's identity immediately, but if it can reasonably be linked to a person, directly or indirectly, it may be personal data. Let's use an example. Imagine an online supermarket records a customer's IP address, delivery postcode, shopping history, preferred payment method, and the time they usually place orders. Each item may look ordinary on its own, but together they can create a detailed profile of a specific individual.
That makes sense. What about anonymous data?
Truly anonymous data is generally outside GDPR because nobody can be identified from it. For example, a city may publish statistics saying 20% of people in this area use public transportation every day. If nobody can be identified from the data, that may be anonymous information. But organizations need to be careful. Data is not truly anonymous just because a person's name has been removed. If the data can still be linked back to a person using other information, it may still be personal data.
What about pseudonymized data?
That is a very important distinction. Pseudonymized data means direct identifiers have been replaced with something else, such as a code. For example, instead of storing Mia Chen, a research database may store participant 8472. But if the organization still has a separate key that links participant 8472 to Mia Chen, the data is still personal data. Pseudonymization improves privacy and security, but it doesn't automatically remove GDPR obligations.
Part 4. Controllers and processors. I often hear two legal terms, controller and data processor. What's the difference?
A data controller decides why and how personal data will be processed. A data processor processes data on behalf of the controller. Let's use a simple example. Imagine a small online bookstore. The bookstore decides what customer data to collect, why it needs the data, how long to keep it, and whether to send promotional emails. The bookstore is likely the controller. Now imagine the bookstore uses a cloud-based email platform to send newsletters. That email platform processes subscriber emails on behalf of the bookstore. The email platform may be a processor.
So the controller makes the main decisions and the processor carries out instructions.
Exactly. But in real life, the situation can be more complicated. Some organizations may act as joint controllers if they jointly decide the purposes and essential means of processing.
Why does this distinction matter?
Because the responsibilities are different. Controllers usually have the main responsibility for ensuring that processing has a legal basis, that people receive privacy information, and that their rights can be exercised. Processors must also meet important obligations. For example, they must process data only according to the controller's instructions and implement appropriate security measures. A controller should also have a proper data processing agreement with its processors.
Part 5. The 7 core GDPR principles. Now we are getting to the heart of GDPR. What are the main principles?
GDPR is built on 7 important principles. These principles are like a compass. They guide organizations when they collect and use personal data.
Let us go through them one by one. Principle 1. Lawfulness, fairness, and transparency.
The first principle is lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Lawfulness means the organization must have a valid legal reason for processing personal data. Fairness means it should not use data in a way that is unjust, unexpected, manipulative, or harmful.
Transparency means people should understand what is happening with their data.
Can you give an example of unfair processing?
Imagine a language learning app asks users to provide their email addresses to create an account. Later, the company sells those email addresses to unrelated advertisers without clearly telling users. That may be unfair and non-transparent because users did not reasonably expect their data to be used that way.
So a company cannot hide important information in long and confusing legal language.
That is the idea. Privacy information should be clear, accessible, and understandable. Instead of saying, we may leverage personal data for diversified commercial optimization initiatives, a clearer explanation would be, we use your purchase history to recommend products you may like. Principle 2. Purpose limitation.
The second principle is purpose limitation. This means personal data should be collected for specific, explicit, and legitimate purposes.
An organization should not collect data for one reason and later use it for a completely unrelated reason without a proper legal basis and appropriate transparency.
Can you give us a real-life example?
Imagine you join a gym. The gym asks for your name, payment details, and emergency contact information so it can provide membership services. That makes sense. But imagine the gym later uses your emergency contact information to advertise nutritional supplements to your family members. That would be very difficult to justify. The original purpose was emergency contact, not marketing.
So the organization should ask, why are we collecting this data?
Yes, and it should be able to explain that reason clearly. A good internal question is, could we explain this data use to a customer without making them feel surprised or misled? Principle 3. Data minimization.
The third principle is data minimization. Organizations should collect only the data that is necessary for the stated purpose.
That sounds simple, but I imagine companies often collect too much data just in case.
Exactly. Just in case is often a privacy warning sign.
Imagine an online coffee shop lets customers order a bag of coffee beans. To complete the order, the shop may reasonably need name, delivery address, payment information, email address for confirmation. But does it need the customer's date of birth, employer, relationship status, passport number, and precise live location? Probably not.
So data minimization means asking, do we really need this?
Yes, every field in a form should have a reason. A useful design question is, if we removed this question, could we still provide the service properly? If the answer is yes, the organization may not need to collect that data. Principle 4. Accuracy.
The fourth principle is accuracy. Personal data should be accurate and, where necessary, kept up to date.
Why is accuracy a privacy issue?
Because inaccurate data can harm people. Imagine a bank incorrectly records that a customer has unpaid debt. That error could affect whether the customer receives a loan. Or imagine a hospital records the wrong allergy information. That could be dangerous. Organizations should take reasonable steps to correct inaccurate data.
So this connects directly to the individual's right to rectification. Exactly. If someone sees incorrect information, they may be able to ask the organization to correct it. Principle 5. Storage limitation.
The fifth principle is storage limitation. Personal data should not be kept longer than necessary for the purpose for which it was collected.
So companies can't just keep everything forever.
Correct. Imagine an employer collects job applications for a position. Once the recruitment process ends, the employer should not automatically keep every applicant's CV forever. There may be legitimate reasons to retain information for a limited period, such as legal claims or record-keeping requirements. But the organization should define retention periods.
For example, customer support records may be kept for a defined period. Invoices may need to be retained because of tax law. Unsuccessful job applications may be deleted after a reasonable period, unless the applicant agrees to remain in a talent pool.
What should happen when data is no longer needed?
The organization should delete it, anonymize it, or securely archive it where there's a valid legal reason to retain it. Principle 6. Integrity and confidentiality.
The sixth principle is integrity and confidentiality, often described as security. Personal data should be protected against unauthorized access, accidental loss, destruction, alteration, disclosure, and misuse.
So this is where cybersecurity comes in.
Yes, but security is broader than technology. Technical measures can include strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, encryption, access controls, secure backups, software updates, and vulnerability testing.
Organizational measures can include staff training, clear internal policies, incident response plans, confidentiality agreements, vendor assessments, and rules about who can access which data.
Can you give an example of a simple but serious security failure?
Imagine a company stores a spreadsheet containing employee salaries and health information in a shared folder. Every employee in the company can access it. No hacker is involved, but the company may still have failed to protect personal data properly. Security is not only about stopping external attackers, it's also about preventing unnecessary internal access. Principle 7. Accountability.
This means organizations must not only comply with GDPR, they must also be able to demonstrate that they comply.
So, saying we care about privacy is not enough.
Exactly. An organization should be able to show evidence, such as a clear privacy policy, records of processing activities, documented legal bases, consent records, staff training, security procedures, contracts with processors, data retention rules, and breach response plans.
So, accountability is like keeping your homework, not just saying you did it.
That is an excellent comparison. GDPR is not only about the final result, it's also about the organization's process, documentation, and ability to explain its decisions.
Part 6. The 6 legal bases for processing personal data. You mentioned that organizations need a legal reason for processing personal data. What are those legal reasons?
GDPR provides 6 main legal bases. They are consent, performance of a contract, compliance with a legal obligation, protection of vital interests, public interest or official authority, and legitimate interests. Let us make each one practical. Legal basis 1. Consent.
Consent means the individual agrees to the processing of their personal data. But GDPR consent is not just a casual okay. It should generally be freely given, specific, informed, unambiguous, and easy to withdraw.
What does that look like in practice?
Imagine an online bookstore asks, "Would you like to receive monthly book recommendations and special offers by email?" The user can choose yes or no. That can be a good example of consent for marketing emails. But imagine the bookstore says, "You can't buy a book unless you agree to receive marketing emails forever." That may not be freely given because the person has no real choice.
What about pre-ticked boxes?
Pre-ticked boxes are generally not a good way to obtain GDPR-level consent. Consent should involve an active and clear choice.
And people must be able to withdraw consent.
Yes, if subscribing is easy, unsubscribing should also be easy. A company should not make it simple to say yes and extremely difficult to say no. Legal basis 2. Performance of a contract.
The second legal basis is performance of a contract. This applies when processing is necessary to provide a service or fulfill an agreement with the individual.
For example, if you order a laptop online, the seller needs your name, delivery address, payment information, and contact details. The company needs that data to deliver the laptop and complete the transaction.
Could the company use contract as a reason to send me unrelated marketing emails?
Usually not. Processing must be genuinely necessary for the contract. Delivering your laptop is necessary. Sending you advertisements for smartwatches is usually not necessary to perform the sales contract. Legal basis 3. Legal obligation.
The third legal basis is compliance with a legal obligation. Sometimes an organization must process data because the law requires it.
For example, a company may need to keep invoice records for tax purposes. A bank may need to carry out certain identity checks because of anti-money laundering rules.
So, in that situation, the organization may not need my consent.
Correct. Consent is not the only legal basis. That's an important lesson. Many people think GDPR means everything needs consent. That is not true. The real question is, what is the correct legal basis for this particular processing activity? Legal basis 4. Vital interests. The fourth legal basis is protection of vital interests. This is mainly used in emergencies where someone's life or physical safety is at risk. For example, if a person is unconscious after an accident, medical professionals may need to access important health information to provide urgent treatment.
So this is not something companies should use casually.
No, it is generally for exceptional situations involving serious and immediate interests. Legal basis 5. Public interest or official authority. The fifth legal basis is processing necessary for a task carried out in the public interest or in the exercise of official authority. This may apply to public bodies, local authorities, universities, schools, public health bodies, or regulators. For example, a local council may process resident data to provide public services. Legal basis 6. Legitimate interests. The sixth legal basis is legitimate interests. This is often misunderstood because it sounds broad and flexible. An organization may rely on legitimate interests when it has a genuine and lawful interest in processing data, but it must balance that interest against the individual's rights and freedoms.
Can you give an example?
A company may have a legitimate interest in protecting its systems from fraud. For example, an online marketplace may analyze suspicious login attempts to detect account theft. That can be a legitimate interest because fraud prevention protects both the company and its users. But the company should not simply say, everything we do is based on legitimate interests. It must consider whether the processing is necessary and whether it unfairly harms or overrides people's rights.
So legitimate interests are not a free pass.
Exactly. It is not a magic phrase. The organization should ask, what is our legitimate interest? Is this processing necessary to achieve it? Could we achieve the goal in a less intrusive way? Do the individual's rights outweigh our interests? Would people reasonably expect this processing? Part 7. Privacy notices and transparency. Let us say a company has a legal basis. Is that enough? No. The company must also be transparent. People should receive clear privacy information explaining what happens to their data. A good privacy notice should generally explain who is collecting the data, what types of personal data are collected, why the data is used, what legal basis is relied on, who receives the data, whether data is transferred internationally, how long the data is kept, what rights people have, and how they can contact the organization or data protection authority.
Why are privacy policies often so difficult to read?
Sometimes organizations try to cover every possible legal detail, but clarity matters. A privacy notice should not be written only for lawyers. It should be understandable for ordinary users.
Could you give an example of good and bad wording?
Sure. Bad wording, Personal data may be processed in accordance with our legitimate commercial interests and applicable regulatory frameworks. Better wording, we use your order history to recommend similar products. You can opt out of personalized recommendations in your account settings. The second version tells people what is actually happening. Part 8, Cookies and Online Tracking. Now we have to talk about cookies. Everyone sees cookie banners, but many people just click Accept All without thinking.
That is true. Cookies are small files or identifiers that websites use for different purposes. Some cookies are necessary for a website to function. For example, a shopping cart may need a cookie to remember which products you added. Other cookies are used for analytics, advertising, personalization, or social media tracking. So are all cookies bad? Not at all. Cookies can be useful. The issue is whether people understand what cookies are doing and whether the website has an appropriate legal basis. For non-essential cookies, organizations often need to consider GDPR together with EU e-privacy rules and national laws. What would a more respectful cookie experience look like? A respectful cookie banner should not pressure users. For example, it should not make Accept All a huge, bright button while hiding Reject All behind several confusing screens. It should give people a meaningful choice.
So, dark patterns are a problem?
Yes, a dark pattern is a design choice that manipulates people into doing something they may not otherwise choose. For example, making the reject option difficult to find, using scary wording like "you will have a worse experience if you reject," repeatedly asking users until they accept, or pretending that marketing cookies are necessary for the website to work. Good compliance is not only about having a banner, it's about respecting real choice. Part 9. Data Subject Rights under GDPR. One of the most important parts of GDPR is individual rights. What rights do people have?
GDPR gives people several important rights over their personal data. Let's go through the main ones. Right to be informed. The first right is the right to be informed. People should know how their data is being used. This is why privacy notices matter so much.
So before a company collects data, it should explain what it plans to do?
Yes, ideally at the right time and in a clear way. For example, when an app asks for location access, it should explain why. We use your location to show nearby restaurants and estimate delivery times. That's much better than simply asking for location access with no explanation. Right of access. The right of access means a person can ask an organization whether it is processing their personal data and, in many cases, ask for a copy of that data and relevant information about the processing.
So, for example, could I ask a social media platform what information it has about me?
Yes, you could ask what data it holds, why it uses the data, where the data came from, and who it has been shared with. In many cases, organizations are expected to respond without undue delay and generally within a month, although some situations may allow an extension. Right to rectification. Right to rectification means people can ask for inaccurate or incomplete personal data to be corrected. For example, if a delivery company has your old address, you may ask it to update the information.
What if the organization disagrees with me?
It may need to assess the request, especially if the issue is complex, but it should not simply ignore a reasonable correction request. Right to erasure, the right to be forgotten. The right to erasure allows people to ask for their data to be deleted in certain circumstances. For example, if you withdraw consent for a newsletter and the company has no other legal reason to keep your email address for marketing, it may need to delete it from their marketing list.
Does that mean I can force every company to delete everything about me immediately?
Not always. The right to erasure is important, but it is not absolute. For example, a company may have to keep certain financial records because of tax law. A bank may need to retain some data because of legal obligations. An employer may need to keep information in case of a legal dispute. The key question is whether the organization still has a valid reason to keep the data. Right to restrict processing. Right to restrict processing means that in certain situations, a person can ask an organization to limit how it uses their data. For example, suppose you challenge the accuracy of data in your file. While the organization checks whether the data is correct, you may ask it not to use the data for certain purposes.
So it's not necessarily deletion, but more like pause this use of my data.
Exactly. Data portability. The right to data portability allows people, in certain cases, to receive their data in a structured and commonly used format and move it to another service.
Can you give an example?
Imagine you use a music streaming service and want to move to another platform. Data portability may help you obtain certain data, such as your playlists or listening history, in a usable format. This right is especially relevant where processing is based on consent or contract and carried out by automated means. Right to object. The right to object allows people to object to certain types of processing. For example, people have strong rights to object to direct marketing. If you say, "Please stop sending me marketing emails," the organization should generally stop using your data for that purpose.
That sounds straightforward.
It should be, but some companies make it unnecessarily difficult. A respectful organization should make opt-out options easy to find and easy to use. Rights related to automated decision-making and profiling. GDPR also includes protections related to automated decision-making and profiling.
This sounds especially important now because of AI.
Absolutely. Imagine a company uses an algorithm to automatically reject job applicants, deny loans, or calculate insurance prices. Automated systems can have serious consequences for individuals. GDPR places restrictions on decisions based solely on automated processing when those decisions produce legal effects or similarly significant effects on a person.
So a person should not be judged by a machine without any safeguards.
That's the basic idea. Depending on the situation, individuals may have rights to human intervention, to express their point of view, or to challenge a decision. For example, imagine an AI recruitment system rejects a candidate because it incorrectly interprets a career break as a lack of commitment. The candidate should not simply disappear into a black box. There should be a meaningful process for review. Part 10. Special categories of personal data.
Are some types of personal data more sensitive than others?
Yes, GDPR gives extra protection to certain special categories of personal data. These can include data revealing or relating to racial or ethnic origin, political opinions, religious or philosophical beliefs, trade union membership, genetic data, biometric data used for identification, health data, sex life or sexual orientation.
Why does this data need extra protection?
Because misuse of this information can lead to serious harm, discrimination, exclusion, or loss of dignity. For example, a health app that collects information about someone's medical condition should not casually share that information with advertisers. A workplace should not use biometric attendance systems without carefully considering whether the processing is necessary, proportionate, and properly protected.
So companies should be especially cautious with sensitive data?
Yes, they often need an additional legal condition to process special category data, not just one of the ordinary legal bases.
Part 11. Data security and personal data breaches. Let us talk about data breaches. People often think a breach only means a hacker steals millions of passwords.
A breach can be much broader than that. A personal data breach may involve unauthorized access, accidental disclosure, loss of data, destruction of data, alteration of data, or someone receiving data they should not have received.
Can you give a non-hacking example?
Imagine a hospital employee accidentally emails a patient list to the wrong person. Or imagine a university publishes a spreadsheet online that contains student names and grades. Or imagine an employee loses an unencrypted laptop containing customer information. Those may all be personal data breaches.
What must an organization do after a breach?
First, it should investigate quickly. It should ask what happened, what data was affected, how many people are involved. Is there a risk to individuals? What harm could result? What immediate action can reduce the risk? If the breach is likely to create a risk to people's rights and freedoms, the controller generally has to notify the relevant supervisory authority without undue delay and, where feasible, within 72 hours of becoming aware of the breach.
So not every incident automatically requires a 72-hour notification?
Correct. That is an important legal nuance. The organization must assess the risk, but even when notification is not required, it should document the breach and the assessment.
When do affected individuals need to be informed?
When the breach is likely to create a high risk to them. For example, if hackers steal unencrypted passwords, financial information, or sensitive health data, affected people may need to be informed promptly so they can protect themselves.
What should a responsible company do before a breach happens?
Prepare. It should have an incident response plan, clear internal roles, security monitoring, employee training, vendor contacts, and procedures for documenting decisions. The worst time to invent your breach plan is after the breach has already happened.
Part 13. International data transfers. A lot of companies use cloud services outside Europe. Does GDPR say anything about sending data abroad?
Yes. GDPR regulates transfers of personal data outside the European Economic Area. This is important because data protection may not be the same in every country.
What counts as an international transfer?
For example, a German company stores customer data on servers in another country. An EU startup uses a customer support platform based outside the EEA. A company gives employee data to an overseas payroll provider. Or a mobile app sends analytics data to a service provider in another jurisdiction.
So what must organizations do?
They need a valid transfer mechanism. Common mechanisms include an adequacy decision, where a European Commission recognizes a country provides an adequate level of protection, standard contractual clauses, often called SCCs, binding corporate rules, often used by multinational corporate groups, and in limited situations, specific derogations.
Can a company just sign a contract and forget about it?
No, it should assess the transfer carefully. For example, it should understand what data is transferred, where it goes, who receives it, what security measures are in place, whether the recipient can comply with the contractual obligations, and whether additional safeguards are needed.
Part 13. Data Protection Officers. Do all companies need a Data Protection Officer or DPO?
No, not every organization must appoint a DPO, but a DPO may be required in situations such as public authorities or public bodies, organizations whose core activities involve large-scale, regular, and systematic monitoring of individuals, or organizations whose core activities involve large-scale processing of sensitive data or criminal offense data.
What does a DPO actually do?
A DPO is not just someone who writes a privacy policy once a year. A good DPO helps the organization understand its obligations, advises on privacy risks, supports compliance, monitors practices, and acts as a contact point for individuals and supervisory authorities.
So a DPO should have some independence.
Yes, the role should be meaningful. A DPO should be able to raise concerns and provide advice without being pressured to ignore privacy risks.
Part 14. GDPR fines and other consequences. People often hear that GDPR fines can be huge. Is that true?
Yes, GDPR allows for significant administrative fines. For some violations, the maximum fine can be up to 10 million euros or 2% of total worldwide annual turnover, whichever is higher. For more serious violations, the maximum can be up to 20 million euros or 4% of total worldwide annual turnover, whichever is higher.
What kinds of violations are considered more serious?
Serious violations can include failures relating to core GDPR principles, legal bases, data subject rights, and international data transfers. But it's important to understand that fines are not automatic. Authorities consider many factors, including the nature and seriousness of the violation, how long it continued, whether it was intentional or negligent, what harm it caused, what steps the organization took to reduce the harm, whether it cooperated with the authority, and whether it had previous violations.
So the consequences are not only financial.
Correct. Authorities can also issue warnings, order changes, restrict processing, require deletion of data, or conduct investigations and audits. And beyond legal penalties, organizations can suffer reputational damage. Trust can take years to build and only one incident to lose.
Part 20. A practical GDPR compliance framework. Let's imagine we're advising a small startup. Where should it begin?
A practical GDPR program doesn't begin with copying a privacy policy template. It begins with understanding the organization's data practices. Here's a useful step-by-step framework. Step 1. Map your data. First, identify what personal data you collect. Ask, what data do we collect? Where do we collect it from? Why do we collect it? Where do we store it? Who has access to it? Who do we share it with? How long do we keep it? And does it leave the EEA?
Can you give an example?
Imagine a small food delivery app. It may collect customer name, phone number, delivery address, payment details, order history, location data, customer service messages, and courier information. The organization should map each data flow. For example, we collect delivery addresses to deliver food. We share the address with the assigned courier. We keep transaction records for a defined period due to tax obligations. We use a payment processor to handle payments securely.
Step 2. Identify the legal basis.
Second, identify a legal basis for each processing activity. For example, processing delivery addresses, performance of a contract, keeping invoices, legal obligation, sending optional marketing emails, consent, detecting account fraud, legitimate interests, responding to a medical emergency, vital interests.
So one company can use different legal bases for different activities.
Exactly. There's no single legal basis for the whole business.
Step 3. Write clear privacy information.
Third, create a clear and accessible privacy notice. Don't hide it in a footer where nobody can find it. Make it easy to access during sign-up, purchase, app installation, or data collection.
And avoid vague language.
Yes, explain actual practices, not imaginary legal possibilities.
Step 4. Manage consent properly.
Fourth, where consent is required, manage it properly. That means asking clearly, separating different choices where appropriate, recording when and how consent was given, allowing withdrawal easily, and respecting withdrawal quickly.
So if someone withdraws consent for marketing, the company shouldn't keep sending marketing emails.
Exactly.
Step 5. Respect individual rights.
Fifth, create a process for handling data subject requests. Employees should know what to do when someone says, "What information do you hold about me? Please delete my account. My address is wrong. Stop using my data for marketing. I want a copy of my data."
That sounds like something companies should prepare for before receiving requests.
Absolutely. Privacy rights were easier to respect when systems are designed properly from the beginning.
Step 6. Build security into daily operations.
Sixth, protect personal data using appropriate technical and organizational measures. For a small organization, this may include using strong and unique passwords, enabling multi-factor authentication, limiting staff access, encrypting sensitive data, updating software, backing up important systems, training employees, checking vendors, and having a breach response plan.
So GDPR security is not only something for huge technology companies.
No, the measures should be appropriate to the risks. A small local cafe does not need the same security system as a hospital or global social media platform, but every organization should take reasonable steps. Step 7. Keep documentation and review it regularly. Seventh, maintain documentation and review it regularly. Businesses change. They may add new marketing tools, new AI systems, new app features, new cloud providers, new payment platforms, new analytics tools, or new business partners. Each change may create new privacy questions.
So GDPR compliance is not a one-time project.
Exactly. It is an ongoing governance process. A privacy policy written 3 years ago may no longer match the company's actual practices.
Part 16, Privacy by Design and by Default. What does privacy by design mean?
Privacy by design means considering privacy from the beginning, rather than adding it after a product has already been built. Imagine a startup designing a new social app. Instead of launching first and thinking about privacy later, the team should ask early, do we really need users' precise location? Can we use approximate location instead? Should profiles be public by default? Who can see users' contact lists? Can users delete their accounts easily? How long should messages be stored? Do we need this data at all?
And what does privacy by default mean?
It means the default settings should be privacy-friendly. For example, a new social media account should not automatically make every user's profile visible to the entire internet unless there's a strong reason for that design. A good default might be, only approved contacts can see your profile unless you choose to make it public.
So users should not need to become privacy experts just to protect themselves.
Exactly. Good design should make the safer choice easier.
Part 17, a case study. The fitness app. Let us put everything together through an example. Imagine a fitness app called Move Better. It offers workout plans, step tracking, calorie logging, and personalized coaching. What GDPR questions should the company ask?
Great example. Let's break it down. First, the company should map its data. It may collect name, email address, password, age, fitness goals, step count, weight, sleep patterns, location, health information, payment information, and device identifiers.
That's a lot of information.
Exactly. So the company should ask which information is genuinely necessary. For a basic workout plan, perhaps it needs only age range, fitness goal, exercise preferences, and basic account information. It may not need precise location all the time.
What about health data?
Health-related information can be sensitive and may require extra protection. The company should carefully consider why it collects it, whether it's necessary, what legal conditions apply, who can access it, and how it will protect it.
What legal bases might the app use?
For account creation and paid subscriptions, it may rely on contract. For optional marketing emails, it may use consent. For fraud prevention and platform security, it may rely on legitimate interests. For sensitive health features, the company must consider additional legal conditions and should be especially careful.
What about transparency?
The app should clearly explain, we use your workout history to personalize training plans. We use your email to send account notifications. We will only use your location if you activate route tracking. You can turn off location access in your device settings. You can delete your account through the app or contact our privacy team.
What if the company wants to share data with advertisers?
That would require careful legal analysis and clear transparency. If the company wants to use sensitive health-related information for advertising, the risks become much higher. The company should not assume that users are comfortable with this simply because they downloaded a fitness app.
Part 18, a case study. AI recruitment software. Let's use an AI example. Imagine a company sells recruitment software that automatically scores job applicants based on their CVs, video interviews, and online assessments. What should it think about?
This is a very important example. First, the company needs to identify the roles. Is it the employer that decides how candidates are assessed? Is the software provider only processing data on the instructions of the employer, or are both parties making important decisions? Then it needs to assess the data. The system may process names, contact information, education history, work experience, video recordings, facial expressions, voice data, behavioral patterns, and possibly inferred personality traits.
That sounds risky.
It can be. The company should consider whether all data is necessary, whether people are clearly informed, whether bias or discrimination may occur, whether the system makes solely automated decisions, whether a human reviewer is meaningfully involved, whether candidates can challenge outcomes, and whether a data protection impact assessment may be needed.
What would be a bad practice?
A bad practice would be using an opaque AI system that automatically rejects applicants without explanation, without meaningful human review, and without a way for candidates to challenge errors. For example, suppose the AI learns from past hiring patterns and begins favoring applicants who resemble previously hired employees. That could reproduce unfair bias.
So GDPR is connected to fairness, not only secrecy.
Exactly. Privacy law is not only about keeping secrets, it's also about preventing harmful and unjust data practices.
Part 19, common GDPR misunderstandings. Mia, before we finish, can we go through a few common myths?
Absolutely.
Myth number 1, GDPR only applies to large companies.
False. Small businesses can also be subject to GDPR if they process personal data. The scale of the organization may affect what is proportionate, but small size does not automatically remove responsibility.
Myth number 2, GDPR means you always need consent.
False. Consent is only one legal basis. Depending on the context, processing may be based on contract, legal obligation, legitimate interests, public interest, or vital interests.
Myth number 3, a privacy policy alone makes a company GDPR compliant.
False. A privacy policy is important, but compliance also requires appropriate legal bases, security, documentation, rights processes, vendor management, retention rules, and regular review.
Myth number 4, deleting a person's name makes the data anonymous.
Not necessarily. If the data can still be linked back to a person using other information, it may remain personal data.
Myth number 5, every data breach must be reported within 72 hours.
Not exactly. Organizations should investigate and document breaches. Notification to the supervisory authority is generally required where the breach is likely to create a risk to individuals' rights and freedoms. Where notification is required, it should be made without undue delay and, where feasible, within 72 hours after awareness.
Myth number 6, the right to be forgotten means all data must always be deleted immediately.
False. The right to erasure is important, but there can be exceptions. An organization may need to retain some data because of legal obligations, legal claims, or other valid reasons.
Part 20, final recap. The GDPR mindset. Daniel, could you summarize GDPR in one sentence?
GDPR requires organizations to treat personal data as something entrusted to them, not something they can collect, use, and keep without limits.
And what are the key questions every organization should ask?
Here are the questions I would remember. What personal data do we collect? Why do we need it? What legal basis allows us to use it? Are we collecting only what is necessary? Have we clearly explained what we do? Are we protecting the data properly? How long do we keep it? Who do we share it with? Does it leave the EEA? Can people access, correct, delete, or object to the use of their data? Can we demonstrate that we are complying?
And perhaps the most practical question is, would we be comfortable explaining this data practice openly to the people affected?
Exactly. If an organization feels uncomfortable explaining a data practice clearly, that may be a sign that it needs to rethink the practice.
That's a powerful way to end. GDPR is not only about forms, pop-ups, and legal documents. It's about respect, trust, transparency, and responsible decision-making in a world where data has become part of everyday life. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Mia.
And thank you to everyone listening. Before you click Accept All on the next cookie banner, or before you give an app access to your location, contacts, camera, and microphone, pause for a moment and ask, what data am I sharing? Why is it needed? And do I have a real choice? That's where privacy awareness begins.
Useful GDPR vocabulary from this episode. Personal data. Information that identifies or can help identify a person. Processing. Any action involving personal data, including collecting, storing, using, sharing, or deleting it. Data controller. The organization that decides why and how personal data is processed. Data processor, an organization that processes personal data on behalf of a controller. Legal basis, the lawful reason that allows an organization to process personal data. Consent, a freely given, specific, informed, and clear agreement to data processing. Legitimate interests, a legal basis that requires balancing an organization's interests against people's rights and freedoms. Data minimization, collecting only the data that is necessary. Purpose limitation, using data only for clear and legitimate purposes. Storage limitation, not keeping data longer than necessary. Data subject, the individual whose personal data is being processed. Right of access, the right to ask what personal data an organization holds about you. Right to erasure, the right to ask for personal data to be deleted in certain circumstances. Data portability, the right to receive certain personal data in a transferable format. Profiling, analyzing personal data to evaluate or predict aspects of a person's behavior, preferences, or characteristics. Personal data breach, a security incident involving accidental or unlawful loss, access, disclosure, alteration, or destruction of personal data. Data Protection Officer, or DPO, a person who advises and monitors an organization on data protection obligations. Standard Contractual Clauses, or SCCs, contractual safeguards commonly used for certain international data transfers. Accountability, the duty to comply with GDPR and demonstrate that compliance with evidence and documentation.